So one of the things that I'm often asked is, how did I come from the world of entrepreneurship and the corporate world to get involved in social enterprise and non-profit, in particular Zimbabwe. What I usually tell them is, I started my life as a corporate designer in South Africa, trained in the UK, and over the years my specialty became packaging and corporate identity. I came to the USA to work in a corporate design company owned by Saatchi & Saatchi called Siegel & Gale, and then I got involved in a line of products made from handmade paper. I created my own line, and the paper I was using was from the Far East. One day I was coming back from South Africa, where I used to visit a lot because I have family there, and I found this wonderful handmade paper in the Victoria Falls hotel gift shop, and found that it was amazingly made in Zimbabwe, and I started to work with the paper makers there to create this line of handmade paper products, which I brought to the United States and sold within the gift industry. So I started to get to know the people there, and amazingly, suddenly we had this enormous order from a humongous crafting firm in Utah, who wholesaled scrapbooking products, which I'd never heard of until then. But as a package designer, I quickly went back to Zimbabwe and recreated our product line in the scrapbooking format, and they placed an order for 3 containers of them. The result was that I got this rather enormous order to go back and produce, which was a challenge, to say the least, and this was in 2003. And at that time, things were not quite as they were bad, but I just knew that with this large amount of money, I was going to be able to set up our own organization, and in fact employed at that stage 400 women. We started in an old mission station just outside the capital, Harare, and the women were based in Chitengwiza, which is a very high-density township near Harare. That was where they lived and where our mission station headquarters were. We rented 2 church halls from the local parish council. 400 women employed for the first, many of them for the first time, and previously impoverished, made a serious impact on their well-being and their ability to look after their families. And this impacted on me in a way that made me realize that fulfilling my dreams were now going to contain the components of making a product line in a medium which I loved, handmade paper, and also making a difference in many, many people's lives who otherwise were unemployed and had to look after their families in extreme poverty. So I started this organization, and once this huge order was fulfilled, we started looking for other customers in other parts of the developed world, like Australia and Belgium and France, and selling them through the gift industry in the USA. And then catastrophe struck in the form of the economy in Zimbabwe fell through the floor, and all sorts of results, such as the failure of infrastructures, came about, so that in spite of our providing, or rather empowering, the women with income-producing work, creating jobs, it was becoming increasingly difficult for them to show up to work because the water supplies were failing. The sewage system became totally contaminated, and as a result of not being able to afford the chemicals, the city councils were not able to afford chemicals. The once free education system there became unaffordable for the parents of the children. The mothers could no longer afford to send their children to school. So in spite of the job creation that we were doing, there were other factors that were required to keep the show on the road, so to speak. So that was when, in 2007, I decided that the only way for us all to continue was to set up a non-profit to provide the women with these social support systems, if you like, essential quality of life support systems that would allow them to continue working at the jobs that they loved, handmade paper making and paper crafting, and continue to be motivated and look after their families. So it suddenly occurred to me how important it was that this combination of private enterprise and non-profit could be in creating a sort of a circular self-sustaining environment in which would benefit and make a huge difference in people's lives, because a social enterprise, which is really a for-profit company, has to be involved in a product. We're providing skills training, but the skills training means that they produce a beautiful handmade paper product. Non-profit can't be involved in marketing and selling. That's not what they do best. So the distribution side, the finding of markets in the developed world, is better taken care of by a for-profit enterprise or a social enterprise. And I want to actually just emphasize the difference between a regular enterprise and a social enterprise. A regular enterprise is an organization that's in it to make money and provide the founders or the owners with a living, and for all the employees to make salaries. But a social enterprise has another component, and that's what I call the compassion component. It's the willingness to start a for-profit enterprise, but with the component of doing good and making a difference in the world in addition. And that compassion component is often, how can I put it, it's a risky business for the people that start them, because it's often in underdeveloped countries which normal entrepreneurs would run a mile from. The conditions, it's a case in point is Zimbabwe. I mean, the conditions there, where there's 180,000%, what is it? I've got it here. Yeah, 150,000% inflation rate. And currently the exchange rate is 180 million Zimbabwe dollars to $1 US. Now, if you can imagine the problems that this creates for employers over there to keep their employees to keep up with the wages. So what we do, we've had to develop systems whereby we can keep providing our people with wages and income which keeps up with the rate of inflation. So what we've had to start doing, for example, is instead of paying people on Saturdays, we actually pay them on Fridays. We actually pay them on Saturdays, so they can spend the money the following day for the week, because by the end of the week, if they had to spend it in a week's time, their money would almost be valueless again. So we've had to address all these issues. The other thing is that we now give them a food bonus, basically, so that at the beginning of each month we give them a bonus in order that they can buy food with that then and there, which will last them for the month. Because otherwise this is going to, if they have to spread it over the month, by the time the end of the month came, they could no longer afford to buy the food for the families. So there's all sorts of things that a social enterprise has to do that normal regular enterprises or for-profit businesses don't have to cope with and wouldn't be interested to cope with. But our main intention and our main thrust is to help poor people, and as a designer who loves her work and has brought up a family, and they're now out there earning their own keep and having been educated, I'm finding that enormous satisfaction out of doing work with the products that I love, handmade paper, creating and designing, and at the same time making this the platform in which to help people that otherwise don't have those sort of opportunities as in normal countries.